Now, in tough economic times, such as we're now suffering, well, it can be a great relief to just think back to yarns of other times, better days, we rather fondly imagine. Well, it very often falls to our local newspapers to chronicle those social changes. Unfortunately, given the times that are in it, many of those newspapers have gone to the wall. One illustrious exception, you might say, is right here in Waterford. The local newspaper, the Munster Express, now celebrating 150 years of being in business. And through those decades, it has very often dealt not just with local issues, but also national and sometimes even international. Damien Tiernan has been finding out more.
The Munster Express has been one of the most successful ever newspapers in the country, and its 150th anniversary, and Waterford down through the decades, was celebrated recently in music, verse and prose at a special event in the Theatre Royal in Waterford.
On the 7th of July 1860, the first edition of the Munster Express hit the streets of Waterford, competing with 7 other titles.
The famous offices of the Munster Express are on the quay in Waterford city centre. Editor and managing director Kieran Walsh, who just this week has published a history of the paper, has done copious research, showing the Munster is a record of events since the 1860s of Waterford, South Kilkenny and East Tipperary. The paper is a window on life, the details of which are lovingly pieced together through the intricate labyrinth of rooms which make up this famous building. In 1907, Kieran's grandfather, a councillor and a businessman, bought the paper and also bought up the rival Waterford Citizen, as well as a South Kilkenny paper and a Tipperary paper. The new consolidated newspaper was a force to be reckoned with. So strategically important are the offices of the Munster Express, they were occupied during the Civil War by anti-treaty forces who wanted to stop Michael Collins and his Free State soldiers coming into the city from across the River Shore.
When they occupied the paper, the staff continued to work, the families still lived over the premises, and they kept doing this for about 2 days. And then once there was a bit of gunfire and artillery fire was heard, people got a bit worried. In fact, there was a man shot on Hanover Street just around the corner from us. So when that was learned, everybody decided, look, it was time for the family to leave and the workers stopped working, and the men took the armed men took over and proceeded to defend the building. And we still have bullet holes to prove that there was attacks from across the river. There's about 3 bullet holes there.
Following the modernisation changes brought in by his grandfather, Kieran's father, JJ, took over the newspaper in 1943. High above the front office of the newspaper, through narrow corridors, is the room where the smell of old newspapers gives a clue to the treasure trove of information contained within these covers, such as the week World War II broke out, the same week Waterpark College was opened in Waterford. Along another corridor, there remains a room untouched by the changes which have occurred in Waterford and Ireland. There are parts of this historic building which haven't been touched in decades, such as this office, the original office of the editor, J.J. Walsh. And behind me is the desk that J.J. Walsh worked at, editing the Munster Express for all those decades. In 1987, Alistair Jackson did a special report for RTE on the man himself, highlighting his views, his editorial methods and the major stories he covered over the years. JJ, or Smokey as he was also known, never wanted to retire.
I would never use the word retire. You see, I'd be always a consultant editor or consultant something, you know. What do you retire to? You retire to boredom, isn't that it? You retire to boredom.
But retire he did, handing the keys over to Kieran, who today oversees all aspects of the business. Liz McGough has been working in local newspapers for over 30 years and is 12 years with the Munster. She says advertising is the engine room of the paper and says being family owned is vital.
Being a local newspaper and privately owned, I think it gives us a uniqueness in the marketplace. Also, it allows you to have a little bit more flexibility.
And of course, along another corridor, there's the newsroom led by Johnny O'Connor, who joined the paper in 1966.
You can do a lot of good. and sometimes it's not the big blockbuster stories, and we have had a lot of those over the years, but it's not those. Sometimes it's the obituary.
Michael Comerford and his colleagues occupy another room where the pages are carefully made up on screen. He's been with the paper 40 years.
It's tougher in those days because it was hot metal and it was physical work, whereas over the years it's developed into more desktop publishing, so it's now quite a nice job sitting at a computer all day and, you know.
And downstairs is the room housing the print works. The Munster, one of the only papers of its kind in the country to still have its own printing works. Here since 1988, Tony Kelly says there have been great characters working here over the years.
Tony Rogers, Jack Williams, Jack Kennedy, names that everybody around Waterford City are very familiar with.
Fintan Walsh has been writing the local passage notes and athletic notes for decades.
They love to see their names in print. I think that's number one. And they also love to have the little bit of gossip as well. That goes around the whole area, like, you know. And I often put in little anecdotes there, and I know they enjoy that.
And as for that future and the magic that goes into producing a paper week in, week out for 150 years, a final word.
It's difficult. We've had consultants in here, you know, and they spent the week humming and hawing and examining everything, and, you know, well, they might give the reports to Kieran, he's the managing director, and, you know, he said, but privately they say to me, look, we know there's a newspaper kind of, but we don't know how it happened. And sometimes we don't know ourselves.